They say that talking to yourself is a sign of insanity. But I think that's only if you answer back. Right? Right. This is Talking to Myself, the Art Advice podcast, where I use anecdotes from my life to try to make myself a better artist, and possibly a better person. While others may get some benefit from this as well, I'm mostly just trying to avoid paying for therapy. Today on the podcast, I thought we'd talk about the concept of being good enough. We'll start with the life anecdote thing. This is a recent one. This isn't part of my distant past. This is immediate. Because of the recent unpleasantness, I've been, for some reason, I've been spending a lot more time at home. I mean, it hasn't really affected my work week, but because I can't really go anywhere else, I've been spending more time at home than usual. I'm sure everyone can relate. And that means watching a lot of YouTube, in my case. So what I've done is started watching reviews of B movies and old movies from my past that I liked or didn't like or can barely remember. Very entertaining. There's several channels on YouTube that I recommend. One of them in particular is Good Bad Flicks. That show has been amazing to me to remind me of these wonderful gems that I watched as a kid and had forgotten about completely. But the point of this is a lot of these movies, things like Deep Star 6 and Double Dragon the movie, they're not what most people would consider good. As far as movies go, they don't feel like classic cinema. They're not dramatically important or comedically groundbreaking, or in the case of a lot of horror movies, they're not for everyone. And that's sort of the gist of my argument today. Artistic things that are good because people think they are. People that enjoy things will think they're good because they enjoy them. It shouldn't be the other way around, but a lot of times people feel like when they hear something's good, they have to enjoy it. Which is why I have such a big problem with a lot of pop music. Ostensibly, it's great because it has so much fan base behind it and it's selling so many copies or whatever. But a lot of it I don't like. It doesn't appeal to me. And that's fine. If you find that you make art and it doesn't seem to appeal to a wide audience, or it doesn't seem to be being greeted with the opinion that it is good, necessarily, you need to understand and remember that this is all opinion, and it's very subjective. The only one who really has to feel like it's good is you, as the artist. And I know that if you're anything like me, most artists are their own worst critic. Honestly, that's good and bad. It's helpful and not helpful. Your opinion is the only one that matters, because oftentimes your opinion is the harshest of your own work. But you should never try to criticize your taste. Tastes change. You may look at older work and go, what was I thinking there? Maybe it's not even a technical issue. Maybe it's a matter of content choice or subject or what you thought might be finished when it's really not, or overdone even. You just need to make sure that you don't let your opinion of your work be controlled or directed by anyone else's opinion of your work to a large extent. Now, taking criticism is different from this, because you have to be willing to accept that other people's opinions about things have validity of some kind. Just don't make it the be-all end-all of your opinion about your own work. And a lot of artists, myself included, especially myself, this is the point of the podcast after all, is me talking to myself and telling myself not to do stupid things anymore. We get hung up on things not being good enough for whatever reason. Either in our own opinion it's not good enough to be released into the world, or you release it to the world, you try to submit it for something and it doesn't get in or doesn't sell or isn't popular. And while that is important to keep in mind if you're planning on making a living as an artist, that's vaguely important, it's not so important that you should stop doing the things that you do based on the fact that you don't think they'll sell, for instance, or that they won't be popular. They won't get enough likes on Instagram. They won't get any new follows, or they won't lead to a new collab with someone. You need to be convinced of your own vision enough to make things that you like just because you like them. And I know this sounds ridiculous for someone who wants to make a living at art, and I know that thinking is keeping me from doing certain things. But I think, we'll look at it this way. If you make things just because the market seems like it would accept it, and it's not something you're too interested in, the amount of work you have to put in to make it good to you, as far as like technically good, it's going to be like twice as much as making something that you're interested in or enjoy, because that kind of stuff will just flow out of you. And you'll end up with a better result. People can always tell if the artist is into what they're making. How many times have you watched, back to the movies, how many times have you watched a movie and you sat through someone's performance, you're like, that guy's phoning it in. He didn't even want to be there, obviously. That kind of thing's pretty common, especially in these B movies that I love so much. But there's always something in the movie. If I like it, there's usually some reason for that. There's something in the movie that's charming to me, or that I find appealing or groundbreaking or nostalgic even. Just I remember seeing this movie as a kid and it was really great. I like a lot of horror movies. The first time a horror movie ever scared me, and this was like 10 years into watching horror movies, the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie came on. And this was in the age of video. I didn't get to see it in the theater. So I watched it on VHS at home, alone, during a thunderstorm, which was a brilliant idea. And that movie scared the living crap out of me. And I haven't had that exact experience with a horror movie since. There have been a few that have been very good at building suspense and making you feel really scared. But that movie always has a special place in my heart as far as horror movies go because of the effect it had on me in the past. And that's a weird example because most people would agree that that is a great horror movie. One of the big top 3 of the early slasher films. And I think a lot of times with art, that kind of thing happens where you feel like you produce something and you put a lot of work into it, and let's say you post it on Instagram and it doesn't get any likes, or it doesn't get as many as you thought it would. And then for some reason, you'll dash something off because you had an interesting idea, and you'll throw that on Instagram and it does a lot better. Now, Instagram's a really poor way to judge how good something is, for sure. It's also not that great a way to judge how popular something is, because the exposure to it is being controlled by some sort of mysterious supernatural algorithm that no one understands. So it doesn't really tell you how many people like it. It tells you how many people of the people it showed it to like it, which is not very useful. The main direct comparison you want to try is if you had like a live art show and people came and they were there and they were your crowd. There were people that should be interested in your art and they didn't like it. That would be a little more telling. Would that keep me from doing that kind of art again if it was what I really wanted to do? No. It might keep me from making another art show from that art. I have to try to find some other route to get it out there in the world, but I would still make it. I'd still put it out there. I'd just try to find the audience that would be interested in it. And it comes down to, if you want to think of it as a business sense, it comes down to this basic business axiom. There are people willing to buy this thing because they like it. You just have to find them. And if you stop producing things that you really care about simply because you're worried that no one's going to like it, you're going to be constantly stuck in a rut of having to produce things that you don't care that much about. And that's way too much like the soul-sucking jobs we're trying to get out of to do art. You know? Jobs have to be jobs, but they don't all have to be the horrible soul-crushing jobs. If you want a job in a creative career and you have the skills and you have the desire, you should earn the right to make the things you like to make and somehow still find some way to market them. If there is an audience for it out there, and there usually is, the job becomes finding those people. So, future self, modern day self in 10 minutes from now self, you need to understand that making things for a market is not a great idea. You need to explore markets that'll be interested in things you make already. And for God's sakes, don't stop making things because you aren't having success selling them. Always keep making things. In the very worst case, you end up with a bunch of stuff that you enjoyed making and had some fun and learned some things making. That's the worst case. If you don't make things, the worst case is your skills atrophy and you have no things made. So You're never going to find an audience with no products. And I don't mean to call them products in a crass sense, but creations, if you wish, whatever you want to call them. So the bottom line for me, make more stuff. Make as much stuff as I can. Try to stay true to the things that I love to make and make those things. And eventually, hopefully, they will sell. Thanks everybody for hanging out. I really appreciate you being here for the podcast. Special thanks to my patrons on Patreon. Make all this possible, and you guys get to see and hear these a week earlier. You are the shiniest people I know, and I adore all of you. Everybody take care. Stay inside. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Don't lick any strange things you find in the house. Bye for now.